Welcome to today's episode of the E-Commerce Revolution podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of e-commerce and uncover the tools and tactics that empower today's emerging entrepreneurs. Our podcast is part of our community with the same name. The community is geared to providing emerging e-commerce entrepreneurs with courses, content, and coaching to help you all launch and grow successful businesses. Check us out at ecomrevolution.co. Let's get things started. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode number 1. All right, today's guest is not new to the podcast, but what we're going to ask him today, and hopefully what he's going to tell us today, is going to be 100% new. Our guest is a true SEO master. He really knows his stuff. Trust me, I have asked him every question under the sun, and he's answered it with confidence. Our guest superpower is that he regularly helps brands outrank competitors, get this, by 100x their size in search, helping these brands overtake their competitors with a fraction of the marketing budget. Amazing, huh? That's pretty good. You gotta take note of that. He's also quoted as saying, investing in SEO and educational content isn't sexy, but it drives long-term compounding ROI, which I 100% agree with. And not to be overlooked, our guest once hiked a volcano in Guatemala while dealing with food poisoning and made it back alive, of course. So, just with that said, that part alone, I mean, you really got to listen to him. You know, he's got what it takes to make it up a volcano with food poisoning and then back down again. Pretty amazing, if you ask me. So, without any further ado, please welcome back Pat Ahern to the E-Commerce Revolution podcast. Pat, it is great to have you back here.
Ramin, I am so excited to be back, especially for the season opener. I was joking before that I'm feeling the extra pressure to deliver, so hopefully I can live up to expectations.
Well, you will. And just before we get started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to you for having me on your podcast, Customer Growth Session. So for those of you out there, go take a look. We'll put the link to it in the show notes. I had a lot of fun. You asked me some great questions, I felt, and hopefully I delivered on your end. And we're all here to help others out there, right? Help e-commerce entrepreneurs out there.
Definitely. It was a pleasure having you on. I was so excited we could pull you in for half an hour, 45 minutes to pick your brain.
Well, thank you. So let's get into this topic of search engine optimization, or as we like to quickly say it, SEO, right? And I think, Pat, and I want to get your opinion on this. Most entrepreneurs, somebody getting into the e-commerce space for the first time, what I like to call emerging entrepreneurs, find SEO to be confusing, a lot of hard work, and in most cases, the rankings that they're trying to go after are hard to attain. How would you respond to that?
Oh, I would totally agree. SEO is, in my opinion, it's oftentimes approached as a much more complex concept than I think it really needs to be. I'll be the first to say I've been doing SEO for, at this point, 12 years, maybe 13 years. There's a lot that goes into it. There's, I would argue, probably thousands of different levers you can pull on your website or off your website that are going to impact the way that you rank in search. But at the same time, I like to say that I find it most effective to start out with a baseline understanding, start out with what I'd call like the foundational components of what really SEO consists of. And once you understand those baseline components, once you understand at a high level how search engines work, it can be way more straightforward. So I'd love to, if you find it helpful, to dive into what are those core components that ultimately, if you can learn what those master levers are, you can figure out where to invest in SEO, what areas to focus on that are really going to have the greatest impact on your business.
Well, you stole the words right out of my mouth. My next question to you literally was, if you were going to start an e-commerce business today, and knowing what you know about SEO, what 3 strategies or 4 or 5, whichever one, you go with the number that you feel is the best, would you put together and implement for your business, knowing that you don't have a big budget to work with, and maybe just you doing a lot of the work, or maybe you would be working with, a virtual assistant? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, definitely. Great question. So One caveat I'll share before we get into like tangible SEO strategies. If you're an emerging e-commerce brand, let's say you can spend, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $5,000 per month, on, let's say, marketing as a whole. One of the very common mistakes I'll see a lot of emerging e-commerce brands making is investing, in many cases, a little bit too heavily in SEO from the onset. Reason that can be a mistake, SEO is a long-term investment. So long-term, SEO is going to drive phenomenal results for your business. That being said, if you're at the early stages where marketing dollars are really tight, where maybe you really are trying to reach cash flow positive and all you have is, a certain amount of savings that you're living off of and trying to start your business off of, one of the big things I'll recommend to these brands is, hey, right out of the gate, take 60, maybe 80% of your marketing budget and put it into short-term customer acquisition channels. Specifically, that's going to be things like partnering with publisher sites who might collect commission for referring your product to their readers. Could be deciding, hey, I'm going to put a bunch of money into Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads, Twitter ads, you name it. But I really encourage, in the short term, until you can start getting to that profitability point, only put a fraction of your budget into SEO. Long-term, SEO is going to be where you're going to get most of your customers from. But in the short term, it can be a little precarious if you invest too aggressively in it. So with that being said, let's say you're putting $1,000 a month into Facebook ads, you're getting some good customers from it, and you're really trying to figure out, okay, maybe I have 10 hours a week that I can put into SEO efforts for that long-term exponential customer growth. What should I be doing? If you are a brand new brand, a really good way to think of it is that SEO, I like to say, can be broken down into 3 core components. Component 1 is what I refer to as relevancy. Without getting too deep into the weeds on each of these components, relevancy is really all about making it easy for Google and other search engines to understand what your business is about, to understand like what sort of key phrases someone types into Google that are directly related to your business that you should actually show up for. Grouping 2, authority, is all about telling Google and other search engines that you're a reputable source for information, showing that you're a trustworthy brand that should be showing up for these types of queries as opposed to your competitor. In grouping 3, I refer to that as crawlability. You'll hear the term technical SEO thrown around for that quite a bit. I describe that as almost like the equivalent of like doing engine maintenance on your car. It's the types of things you're going to do to fine tune your website to make sure that it is more straightforward for users to use, it provides a better user experience, and operates more smoothly, and is really just more straightforward for search engines to navigate their way through it and understand the different types of pages that are out there. For most emerging brands, that third grouping, crawlability, isn't going to be the lever that's going to move the needle the most for you. Oftentimes brands can get away with just doing a couple of baseline items and then just coasting off of that until they reach a much higher level of growth. So assuming you're that early stage brand, the 2 levers that are going to drive the best results for you are focusing on making it really easy for Google to understand what your business is about and making it really clear to Google that you're an expert in your subject matter. So let's take a tangible example. Let's say that you're launching a new razor blade company. You're trying to compete with Dollar Shave Club, Harry's, and all the other big razor blade brands out there. No easy feat, but you have 10 hours a week and you have the strategy behind you that's going to help you to get there. If you're launching this brand new razor blade brand, one of the best things you can do is start out by defining what niche positioning could you go after that maybe is underserved in the market. And this is going to be a little bit of a mix of customer interviews. Customer development is oftentimes like a jargony term thrown around there to try and understand what's missing from these really big brands, and then incorporating the SEO insights to say, okay, we think that, there's this big opportunity to narrow down to this particular niche of razor blades. From there, we can lean on SEO to research what businesses are currently ranking for that theme today. We can look to understand how trustworthy are those brands? How many sites do they have linking back to them? What's the depth of blog articles that they've published on their site that show search engines like Google that they're an expert on this space? And we can really look to say, how feasible would it be for us to overtake them in these areas? So once you've started coming up with, or, whether it's defining your niche fully or just have theories about what your niche is going to be, the really big thing that's going to move the needle for you in the early stages is giving Google every sign in the world that you are an expert on all things related to this particular niche. So if you're launching razor blades and you're trying to, let's say, do women's razor blades, the best thing you could do is identify what sort of themes are your potential customers looking for online today. Either what are they going to Reddit for and asking about in Reddit communities? You can lean on all sorts of keyword research tools, whether it be Ahrefs, SEMrush, there's dozens out there, to ultimately uncover what are people searching for. From there, we can start saying, okay, let's write the best resource on the internet about each of these topics that we can prove based on data our customers are curious to learn more about. And let's focus on creating the best resource on the internet about this that injects our expertise on the subject matter, that injects the way that our product is different than all of our competitors out there, and ultimately positioning ourselves as uniquely better for this subset of customers that we really want to target. So, long and short of it, if I had to say choose 2 levers or 3 levers to focus on, start by identifying what is that niche positioning that you can win in against your competitors in the long term. Start writing the best resources on the internet and injecting your own expertise in the industry into these individual articles that you are writing. And then from there, look to build relationships with other people in the space, whether it be other e-commerce businesses, maybe other local businesses that you have partnerships with, whether it just be other, let's say in this case, razor blade publications. Get them to link back to your website, which is going to further show Google that you're an expert in your space, and is ultimately going to help you to start ranking and help you to start winning those customers on autopilot when, let's say, 10,000 people every month go to Google and search for women's razor blades looking to pull out their credit card and make a purchase today.
Okay, that's good. And I mean, listen, that's a very, very comprehensive strategy, but I think, you sum it up in, 2 or 3 things that you need to do out of the gate. And we'll dive into each of those because I'm very curious to know what the going, like content, for example, that always comes up. How much content? And when you say articles, I just want to make sure we're also interchangeably using the word blog here, right? So that is something out there that people always ask me too. Like, when you say article, do you mean blog? Yes, same thing. And I assume you're referring to the same thing as well, right?
Oh, that's a great question. And you bring up, and I won't go too deep into this because this could be a whole topic in of itself as well. But you bring up a phenomenal point. If I use the term articles, I'm typically referring to like a written blog page that's going to be published on your website. That being said, and I'm guilty of doing this because this is what our team really specializes in, is writing this long form educational content. One of the other opportunities that's out there is if you are researching these opportunities and you're seeing, hey, huge search demand, huge number of potential customers that are looking for this theme every month, I'd really challenge you to think about it and ask yourself the question of, hey, is writing a blog article, is that the best way to serve up that result to my customers? Some people listening may say, hey, you know what? I'm way better off creating a short TikTok video. Some people may say, hey, I'm way better off making a 30-minute long YouTube spiel. Some people may say, hey, I'm way better off posting, Twitter threads or posting these longer LinkedIn posts about this on a regular basis. Term content can be super broad. I like to think of it in terms of writing blog articles for your website. But as we're going through this, I'd really challenge listeners, ask yourselves, what type of content medium do you think is going to be best for your readers, and focus on that specific medium, applying all these other insights from there.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And, I like to think that these days, if you're an e-commerce entrepreneur, you also need to be a content creator at the same time, right? So good point to whatever that content is, getting that out there. And you mentioned, understanding your niche, really getting the understanding. And, I like to reference buyer persona, like writing a buyer persona. And, that I think comes in very handy. Once you know your buyer persona, a fictional representation of your ideal customer, creating that content. I think back to some of the content that you created for some of our clients back in the day. What are they looking for? They're not just always looking for the product that you're selling. They're looking for information that relates to the product, that can be used, how your product can be used maybe with other things. And I think that, you use the word education. I think that's a great term and something that e-commerce entrepreneurs should hold on to as they create content, whatever that content is. But in the case of what we're talking about today, written content, blog format, still matters a lot, right?
Oh,
still
definitely.
matters a lot. Yeah. Well, let me just ask you a question. I mean, I'm taking myself back to 2013, and I had an e-commerce business at the time, and we got Panda. You remember Panda? I think the beginning of of Google's many algorithm updates that came fast and hard, and our business was, it was affected. And a lot of e-commerce businesses at that time were affected by this algorithm rollouts. They're still doing this. They're maybe not doing it at that pace that they were doing it back then, but how are e-commerce entrepreneurs supposed to deal with this when, all the work that they put in could literally, something could change tomorrow in Google's policy and their algorithm and maybe wipe out all their work? How do you protect yourself from that? How do you future-proof your SEO strategy?
Oh, definitely. That's such a great question. And to your point, I mean, Google has, I think the first update they rolled out, and I'd say fact check this one, listeners. I think it was like 2003 maybe, or 2004 that they rolled out. It was their Florida update was the nickname for it, which was like
they were using states back then before they moved to animals.
Oh man, yeah, they're all over the place with the names for these. They've come up with some really wonky names. They definitely have a lot of fun with those.
Yeah,
but Google's had this trend over time of ultimately trying to figure out how can we, in their eyes, how can we build the best search experience possible? Because ultimately their theory is, hey, if we provide a great search experience, we're going to get a ton of people going to our search engine, which means we can sell ads and, take it from there, generate a ton of revenue, a ton of profit. There's this joke that, a lot of SEOs will look at things and say, okay, here's the way that Google's algorithm is designed today. Here's some things we think we can do today that are going to help us to rank, really, really effectively in the short term. Google will see this trend coming on. Google will roll out this large series of updates. Now a lot of their updates are actually like machine learning driven and kind of just like out of their hands at this point. But Google will ultimately try and crack down on, what I'd call like trying to bend the rules a little bit that Google is trying to get everyone to play by. They'll penalize some of the sites that are going against the rules. And those practices just aren't rewarded in the long term. Nowadays, and we're even seeing this to a really large degree with what Google has referred to as like their helpful content updates. We saw this really, really big time back in the very beginning of March, where Google started rolling out this massive core algorithm update that started really going after sites that were doing a lot of these, what are becoming like now very common practices, especially with large scale AI generated content. And in particular, we're seeing a lot of like what I'd refer to as publisher sites. So think sites that are like very information driven, really focused on referring readers to buy a product and collecting affiliate commission from it. We're seeing a lot of those sites really take a beating right now. The couple takeaways I would say for e-commerce, because I personally haven't seen e-commerce businesses get affected nearly as heavily based on what others in the community have shared. But I think there's a couple really good lessons we can learn from some of the sites that have gotten impacted, even with these most recent algorithm updates, but also, as you said, going back to 2012, 2013. First thing, very high level, if you're looking to figure out how can you get one step ahead of Google and kind of win out against their algorithm, you might be able to get away with it in the short term. And there are a lot of businesses that do really well saying, hey, we're just going to try and stay one step ahead of Google. We're going to build a new brand. We're going to, do all these tactics that maybe don't fall in line with what Google has in mind. But our plan is we're going to generate enough short-term revenue that by the time we get penalized, it's fine. If you're looking to build a business for the long term, what I would really advocate for doing is looking at it in terms of what I refer to as Google's long-term mission. Google wants to provide the best search experience possible for people that are using their search engine so that people will keep on coming back to their search engine. A portion of those people will click on ads, and that is how Google generates, I believe, 70 to 80% of its revenue today. If you are focusing on doing things that are in the best interest of that reader that you're trying to get to your site, in the long term, I'd argue that taking that general methodology is going to get you 90% of the way there. Certainly, there are going to be some things that change in Google's algorithm. I'd encourage any e-commerce owners to pay attention to how much traffic you're getting from search engines every month, to monitor key themes that you're ranking for and seeing how that changes over time. But if you're really thinking hyper long term and saying, what can I do that's going to make life even better for readers? What can I do that's going to make it easy for Google to understand my website? You're getting yourself 90% of the way there. Within that, and this gets into like a subfacet of that, one of the trends we've really started to see maybe in the past, I'd say 12 months, I guess it would, maybe let's say 18 months ago, OpenAI rolled out like their ChatGPT 3 or GPT-3, I guess it was, in the form of ChatGPT. I think it was like November 2022, if I remember correctly. From that time, a lot of people started saying, hey, let's start using AI to generate a ton of content for our site. Mindset being, hey, we can basically get this machine that's going to pump out a 2,000 word blog article for us. It's going to cost us a couple pennies per article. It'll be ready in 5 minutes and we can just slap it up on our blog and be good to go. A lot of sites that did it, similar to that idea of staying one step ahead of Google, a lot of sites were able to get some really serious traffic from it in the short term. A lot of those sites have seen their traffic go down to zero, though, since that time. So for those that are thinking about, some of those like shorter term tactics, trying to figure out how you can, cut corners, stay one step ahead, I would just really encourage you to think about it and ask, hey, do we want to build a business for the long term? Or are we just trying to get some short-term revenue? Something like AI generated content, in my eyes, AI is not very good at producing content right now. I've run a lot of tests. I think it's going to get significantly better over time, but I also think that Google is going to get much savvier and much better at cracking down on AI generated content. Most brands that we work with, I advocate for not using AI in their like content generation process. There are certainly some things you can do with AI, but without getting too deep into the weeds, I would say think about what's going to be best for users in the long term. Assume that any tactic you can do that you think is going to put you one step ahead of Google, that it's really just a waiting game until Google catches up and slaps you for doing it.
Yeah, well, I find it very interesting that, these policies come out against AI when, they are heavily pushing Gemini and even mentioning, in there, this is a great content creator. You can use this for content creation, yet they don't like it when, and I understand the I don't like part because, the content that gets put up there that is AI generated, to your point, it's not, it's not spot on. I mean, I always say maybe it gets you 60 or 70% of the way there. You need to be involved as a human being because you have the knowledge, you have the emotion that you can put into the content, and put interesting stories behind it. But I do find it interesting that they are penalizing yet also promoting and heavily use our system, use our platform for AI. So it's an interesting and I working with a lot of e-commerce, and we have a section devoted to AI and automation in our community because a team of one looks to AI as, wow, look what I created. What I try to also say is, and maybe, get your thought on this, is the AI can be maybe a writing partner with you. And, there's got to be back and forth. And yes, it may be well-versed or quick to find information that you can't find. But, that's a good writing partner. Helps you if you're writing a book, or whatever you're doing, you would love to have a writing partner. What are your thoughts on using AI from a writing partner standpoint while still staying very involved in the process?
Oh, I love that. And I was going to say, just to build upon what you were saying about Google before that, it's definitely a little bit hypocritical the way that Google's approaching it, saying like, hey, we really they've shifted their exact wording on their policies for it. I would argue, based on what they've done to penalize sites, they're pretty opposed to AI generated content. But to your point, yeah, you have search generative experience that they're rolling out. They were rolling it out in beta, starting to roll it out to the public nowadays. But it's ultimately it's an AI generated response to queries. So it's a little bit of hypocrisy there, but don't tell the Google gods I said that. I don't want to get penalized for it.
Yes, we will. We said nothing here. We'll wonderful tools you have. Amazing platform.
But yeah, to your point about AI, so I wholeheartedly agree with you. The way that I personally look at it, and the way that I really advocate for our team to look at it, is assume that using AI for any sort of task, writing, you name it, assume that it's a virtual assistant that has access to all the information in the world, but also play it safe. Assume it's a virtual assistant that is going to stab you in the back as soon as you put your guard down. Reason I say that in particular, AI still has a lot of hallucinations. It still makes up a lot of facts. And a lot of the AI tools out there are getting way better at citing their sources. But it's better to assume that anything that comes out of AI needs to be fact checked, to not just take it as, call it just the objective truth. Assume that there's some subjectivity because it's built off of all these different data points of information created from subjective human beings across the internet. For me, what I find really helpful for AI, so our team, when it comes to creating content, both for our own website, for client websites, we don't use AI to generate any of that content. That being said, what I really encourage our team to do is to use AI as your sounding board and use it as an ideation tool. So some of the things that I personally find it really helpful for are, let's say I have the first draft of an article. I am writing a blog article for e-commerce founders that are considering investing in SEO, talking about why they should be investing in SEO. I may go to ChatGPT and I may tell ChatGPT, hey, I'm writing an article with this user in mind. Assume they have, this much revenue per year. Assume they have X number of employees. Here's the first draft of my blog article. Put yourself in the shoes of that owner. A, poke holes in my argument. B, what follow-up questions come to mind for you? From there, ChatGPT is phenomenal at saying, hey, here's some things that maybe you didn't think about. And let's say it gives you 10 different recommendations or 10 different follow-up questions. Oftentimes, you may find that 6 to 8 of those follow-up questions are really valid points and are going to be really great additions for you to add into your article. And from there, you've leveraged the best that the internet has to offer, but you've also, not just trusted it as the objective truth and said, hey, let me treat it as an opinion. Let me see what are these data points I agree with, but let me use this to just get some other ideas out there. Another example might be, let's say I'm writing that article for, e-commerce founders who are considering whether they should invest in SEO. I may tell ChatGPT, hey, here's this article that I'm writing. Here's the audience I'm writing it for. Generate 10 unique sounding title ideas that I might use as my title for my blog article. And, maybe half the ideas are garbage, but maybe 1 or 2 of the titles ends up being far better than something that I could come up with. Or at the very least, maybe it gives me some great thoughts based on the trends I'm seeing to say, hey, I don't love any of these exactly as they are, but I'm going to take most of this title and then I'm going to tweak it a little bit so it comes in my own words. Another thing you can do is AI in particular is phenomenal in terms of summarizing core concepts into layman's terms. Great example of this. Probably a year ago, we were talking to a business that is like a server management business. It's a little bit outside. It's a lot outside our realm of expertise. But I was looking for more information about it. I didn't want to sound like an idiot when I was going into this first call with their team after they scheduled a consultation with us. So I just asked ChatGPT. I said, "Hey, explain Kubernetes to me. I'm 5 years old." And it gave me this incredible example about managing, being an event host that's pushing people into one room based on when one room gets filled up and the other room has availability. And still to this day, that is the example I think of when I'm trying to explain Kubernetes to someone. So synthesizing really complex concepts, finding other ways to explain ideas to people, using it as a sounding board for the first draft of your article, using it for blog topic ideation that you might want to look deeper into on your own. They're all phenomenal use cases for AI. A lot of rambling aside, but I would really just say don't trust it as the objective truth. Treat it as a really good idea tool that can really help you if used correctly.
Those are great. I mean, phenomenal explanation and ways to use it where you're not fully dependent on it, but you're trying to elevate your game. And I love that example of, taking that first call with a client that in an industry that you didn't have, a lot of knowledge in, and all of a sudden you did. And wow, look at that. I mean, you used it in a way to make yourself better, right? Improve your own, your own business skills. And that's what you want to do. And I love all those examples. Let's talk some specifics. Let's go back to, when you kind of laid out, a 3-part strategy that you would use. Let me ask you some very pinpointed questions here about things that are important. Title tags and meta descriptions. Should I spend time as I'm getting my store ready to launch? Should I get in there and write title tags and meta descriptions for my homepage, for my category pages, for all my products? Where's the thought process these days on that, and how much effort I need to put into that?
Oh, great question. My simplified answer would be I personally look at title tags as one of, if not the most important thing you can do in terms of sending a clear signal to Google about what your website is about. I'd highly encourage putting together customized title tags for what I'd refer to as like the core pages of your website. Privacy policy page, no one's going to be clicking on that from search results. You can probably skip over that one. Right. Terms and conditions, same thing. Checkout, you're probably going to have hidden from Google anyways. You can ignore that one. Mm-hmm. But your homepage, to your point, Ramin, any of the product category pages that you're putting together, product category pages are actually a huge SEO opportunity for e-commerce. Let's go back to the razor blades example. We'll switch to men's razor blades. If you offer 5 different men's razor blades, being able to have like a category page, maybe one of them is like men's razor blades for sensitive skin, and 3 of your razor blades fit into that category. You've now created like a very specific intent-driven page on your site that has the potential to rank for some really high value keywords that very qualified customers are going to be looking for. But high level, yes, title tags, meta descriptions, absolutely. Meta descriptions don't directly play into rankings anymore, but they play a really large role in the click-through rate, or in other words, when you do actually show up in Google, how many of the, call it 100 people searching for a particular query are going to click on your listing versus the listing above you versus the listing below you. So high level, definitely recommend it.
It's your call to action on Google,
exactly.
Right? I mean, that is, when you show up. Tell me about alt text, and we know that alt text has many uses, including accessibility. For those who have, reading or seeing disabilities, using readers. But talk to me from an SEO standpoint. Important? Do I need to focus on it from my SEO standpoint, or should I just do it for accessibility?
Great question. So I'm torn with alt text. The recommendation I typically give to clients is, if you're looking for levers to pull in terms of SEO, that should probably be the last lever that you pull on that relevancy side of things. In my eyes, the impact that you get from choosing, let's say like keyword rich alt text that's going to have keywords related to your business, the benefit is really, really marginal compared to some of the other things you could put your time into. To your point, though, alt text plays a really big role in terms of user experience. It is definitely a compliance issue, and that is actually a very real thing that businesses can get sued for not including alt text on images on their site. What I would generally recommend is talk to your developer, see if there is a straightforward process that you can build out from the get-go that's going to auto-populate alt text, especially if you have a lot of different SKUs that you're currently offering. Because if you have 500 different SKUs and you're adding or removing SKUs all the time, adding in alt text for, let's say, 5 different image variants for each product is going to become a really big time suck really quickly. If you can find a way to automate some of that, that's going to be huge. If you just, let's say, have 5 SKUs right now, I'd say take a couple hours, do it manually on your own right now, but absolutely essential to do for user experience for those individuals that are vision impaired, and also, frankly, to avoid a lawsuit. SEO, I'd say it's a pretty minimal impact. Yeah, if you can squeeze a keyword or two in there that doesn't seem blatantly out of place, I'd say do it, but you'll see a pretty minimal gain from doing that from an SEO side.
Nice, and we'll link to. I created a GPT that goes in. We had a client that had 800 products without alt text on there, and was worried about the accessibility side of things, but also felt maybe there's some SEO value. But I'm glad you clarified that. But to have ChatGPT went in there and took care of the alt text, and then regenerated the product file back. So I was blown away. Yes, I was blown away. I mean, it took a lot of prompts to get there, but ultimately, gave a framework for an actual creating a GPT around it. So we're working on that. We'll post to that because I think that could help. And I agree to your point. Accessibility is it's a big thing. It's a big issue out there. But again, thank you for clarifying on the SEO side of things.
Of course.
Let's talk content real quickly. How many?
Real quickly.
Oh yeah.
If I can cut you off just for a minute, please send me that link to that that GPT when it is ready. I would love to roll that out for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to mention that. I would love to see it.
Great. Love to share it. That's kind of what it's out there for. Let's talk content really quickly again. How many words? What's the going rate these days on a blog? Do I need to go 1,500, 2,000? Are we up to 3,000? I remember back in the day we could do 750. We could be okay, but that's clearly not the case anymore.
I miss those days. I remember when I first started out in SEO, I was doing blog content. I was writing like a couple articles a week. Yeah, and it was great. You could write, these 500, 700 word articles. You could rank pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's constantly this ongoing battle where the word count is going up and up and up. So I'll answer that in a couple different parts. One, my general guidance is aim for like 1,500 to 2,500 words for a long form SEO driven article, really an article that you're hoping to get results by ranking in a search engine. I'd encourage, if you're trying to rank for a particular theme, go to Google, pull up the top 10 results that come up on Google. And, there are all sorts of tools that can automate this process, but you can even be as straightforward as just doing like a basic word counter, copy and paste the article into Google Docs. There's all sorts of different like Chrome or Firefox extensions that'll do a word count for you. But get a rough word count and go off of the data that you specifically see there. If you look at search results and you see, hey, average result for this type of query that I want to rank for is 1,000 words, yeah, you can get away with a shorter form article. If it's 4,000 words, you might need to go way more in depth. One of my theories, though, is that we're going to, at the moment, that is where things currently work, April 2024. One of my theories is that we're going to see that change in whether it's this year, whether it's next year. I feel pretty confident that we'll start to see this change a little bit more in the near future. Right now, it's really straightforward to go to ChatGPT or any of these other tools that are oftentimes layered on ChatGPT as their base and get a 2,000 word article about a particular topic. Yes, it's going to be AI generated. It's not going to sound very human. It's not going to be pleasant to read, but it's really straightforward to get a long form blog article. One of my theories is that we are going to gradually start seeing a shift where we're going to have content that is not just necessarily the longest content that's ranking best in Google, which oftentimes is the trend today, but instead we're going to start to see the shift that articles that are quicker to get to the point, that provide that better user experience, that inject more of like a nuanced opinion on a particular subject matter are going to be the content pieces that drive the best results. So one of the things that our team's actually starting to do that I'm really liking the early data that we're seeing from it is we're trying to radically shift the way that we approach blog content. We're still writing longer form articles, but if we're writing, let's say, that same article about why e-commerce business owners should invest in SEO, chances are if you go to Google today, you're going to see a pretty similar format for those articles. Section 1 is going to be why SEO matters. Section 2 is going to be what is SEO. Section 3 is going to be 1,000 words that's going to explain everything you can do to rank in SEO. And then that section at the very bottom, the last 200 words, is going to say why e-commerce business owners should be investing in SEO specifically. So if that's a 2,000 word article, the first 1,800 words of that are really just filler. It's kind of just getting in the way of the experience people want to have. We've been starting to take a different approach now where we say, hey, what is like the singular thing that people want to read? And we're starting to actually put that at the top of the article. So it's not necessarily the most intuitive for user experience, because oftentimes it's a really short introduction followed by like the direct answer that someone's looking for. And then we'll take all that other stuff that maybe at the exact moment is still really important to have in the article to rank in modern day search engines, but we're putting that at the bottom. And it creates this really wonky like article layout. The reality is most of your readers aren't reading the full blog article, though. Most of them are pulling it up. They're skimming to the section that's most relevant to them. They're reading that, and then they're taking action or not taking action based on that small segment. So I'd encourage anyone who is writing content right now for their blog, as I mentioned at the top, look at the individual search results today and let that be your judge for any particular theme you want to rank for. From there, maybe start out with a really brief introduction, but then jump right into the meat of the article. Have that, 500-word answer be really the first thing that your reader sees. And then from there, if there are other details that you think are important to incorporate, the who, what, when, where, why type questions, incorporate those below that core point so that those who want that extra information are able to access it, but you don't necessarily have 90% of your readers needing to skim through all of that in order to get there. If any non-e-commerce businesses, particularly like recipe site owners, are looking at this, please stop making us scroll through your 2,000-word life story. Give us the recipe at the top of the article and then put your life story in if you think it's going to help us to rank. You'll save us all so much time.
Well, first of all, thank you for going in this new direction, because I feel like a lot of blogs out there are very much like YouTube ads, right? Where we're just going to keep telling you that we're going to tell you something, and we're just going to say it 100 times, and then maybe at the end we might give you a link that's going to tell you that we're going to tell you about it again. And you're right. People don't. This is also a question that comes up a lot. Do people actually read my blog, or am I writing for search engines? And I think what you're, coming with this approach, you're helping answer a question that's out there. You're kind of setting this up, and for those out there, you see questions on Google, right? When you do a Google search, you see those batch of questions. Does this help, this process that you're talking about, does this help maybe get you inserted into an answer for one of those questions on Google?
Oh, great question. So short answer, it can definitely play a role in it. So if you go to Google today and you are, let's say you search for, we'll go back to the razor blades example. You search for best men's razor blades. Chances are you'll see that little snippet on Google referred to as PAA, or people also ask. That's going to have a whole bunch of follow-up questions. You can click on any of those. Google will typically give you a short little snippet answer that they're pulling directly from one of the other web pages on the internet. So if you're the business that's providing those answers, in many cases, you may be able to show up, on position 1 on Google, but you may also be able to show up in a couple of those little snippets as well. So those readers who have like more fine-tuned questions are going to be able to go directly to that specific section of your page that answers it. And I'd actually say when you're writing a blog article, one of the tactics I find really effective when you're trying to figure out, what's going to be essential to include, go to Google, type in that phrase, see what search results currently pop up for you, and see what questions Google auto generates in that people also ask section. That's a gold nugget that Google is saying, hey, we're seeing that you're searching for this core theme right here. We suspect that all of these questions are front of mind for you as well. Google's sending you a pretty strong signal that, hey, if you're talking about these things as well in your article that's trying to rank for this theme, you might be onto something big here.
Wow. So literally using Google as your tool,
definitely.
In this case, as your SEO tool. What a novel idea. What a novel idea. I love it. And speaking of tools, and I just want to speak around and get into the topic of keyword research. Because a lot of the SEO tools out there, are, predominantly that's what people are using them for. And I personally feel like SEO keyword research can be like a rabbit hole, right? You'll start one place, and next thing you know, you're looking 20 steps in, and where was I? What started this process? One, what tools do you recommend using for keyword research? And two, what process do you utilize, would you recommend, so it doesn't have to be such a rabbit hole, or maybe it is and that's just the way it is, and deal with it type of situation?
Oh, definitely. So there are a lot of different strategies that you can take. I'll start out with the tools, let's say. What I personally enjoy using the most in terms of keyword research is a tool called, I still to this day don't know what the official pronunciation is for it, whether it's Ahrefs or Arefs. I've heard people in the industry call it by a million different names, but Ahref.
They have two brand names. It's crazy.
I give them credit. They actually did a really fun April Fool's Day thing, a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, where they had like certain pages of their tool. You would load it, you see their logo in the top left corner. Certain pages would have one spelling of, of their brand name. Other pages would have a different spelling. So I give them the little, I'll tip my cap to them for that. I love Ahrefs for that. SEMrush is another really great tool. I got started 12 years ago using SEMrush. I've shifted personally a little bit more to Ahrefs, but we still use both tools on a daily basis. There are so many different tools that are out there. The caveat that I always like to say about it is these tools are built based on, in many cases, are built on projections of data, but always are based on data that comes from the past. So if you're searching, if you go to Google today and you search, or you go to Ahrefs, let's say, and you search for like 2024 related keywords, a keyword like best razor blades of 2024, you're going to get skewed data based on the fact that in the past 12 months that a lot of that data was compiled in, people weren't necessarily searching for, 2024, let's say, in that keyword search originally. They might have been searching for 2023 or razor blades without the date associated. So it tends to be a backwards looking mechanism for analyzing opportunities. If you're working in an industry where it's an established industry, it's been around for 10 years or even for 5 years, keyword research is phenomenal in terms of telling you what have people looked for in the past and what can we safely say they're going to be looking for in the future. If you're operating in a brand new industry, there's going to be a little bit of lag time in that data. So certainly rely on these tools. They are phenomenal. They're going to be one of your best resources, but take the great data with a grain of salt. Just because Ahrefs says, hey, there's no one searching for this theme today, or there's only 10 people searching for it today, those numbers aren't always 100% accurate. Oftentimes they're a good starting point for your analysis. But within that, a couple things you can do in terms of finding opportunities. So one of the first things that I recommend is, first of all, pull together a list of all your competitors. Second of all, go to Google, and I'll use this like same search string on, nearly like maybe like a weekly basis, let's say, when we're doing analysis for clients, of search for the theme best insert industry blogs. So in the case of razor blades, it might be best razor blade blogs. What you're typically going to get is all these different results showing up on Google that are going to be either like FeedSpot or these individual blog articles that say, here are the X best, razor blade blogs of 2024 or 2023. Go there, pull up all of those blogs in a separate tab as well. Now take all of these URLs, the blogs that were recommended in these sites, the competitor blogs that you're finding, plug them into any of these keyword research tools, SEMrush, Ahrefs, you name it. And what you're going to find is a rough estimate of how many people each of these sites, how many readers each of these sites are getting on a monthly basis from search engines like Google. From there, you can start to reverse engineer. You can maybe say, hey, we have 20 blogs right here. Out of these 20, maybe 10 of them are getting less than 1,000 visitors per month. Let's remove them from our analysis. Now, 5 of these blogs get 100,000 readers per month. One of these blogs gets 1 million readers a month. Let's just look at these. So you now have like 5 to 6 really good blogs that you can look at, and you can, using these tools, actually look to see how many people, how many readers are they getting every single month for search engines for each page on their website. Now, granted, this is third-party estimates. If you have access to Google Analytics, you'll see slightly different data popping up in there. But given that you're probably not going to get your competitor to sign off on giving you Google Analytics access, these are a really good starting point for your analysis. So one of my favorite things to do is take a look at these competitor sites and look to understand, first of all, what individual articles are driving the most visibility for them. Second of all, which of these articles that are driving visibility for them have a higher likelihood of actually driving a purchase decision. And here I would say oftentimes just go off of your gut instinct. If it's what I'd call like a definition page, like what is a razor blade? It's great if someone's getting 10,000 readers a month, but you're probably not getting customers from that. On the other hand, if your competitor ranks for best razor blades for sensitive skin, there's a really good chance they're getting some serious customers from that particular page right there. So start building up a list of all those core themes that would be really essential for you to include on your blog as well, to at least match what your competitors are doing. Outside of that, what I oftentimes find is really effective is if you're working in the industry, pay attention to industry trends, pay attention to things that people are talking about on Reddit, Slack communities, LinkedIn, you name it, and jot down those ideas on a regular basis. What I find really effective is set aside time, whether it's once a week, once a month, once a quarter, that you actually go to Google, take those concepts, plug them into Google, and what you can see is who are the brands that currently rank on Google for those themes today. Using those same keyword research tools, Ahrefs, SEMrush, you can actually see how much traffic are each of these individual pages that currently rank for the theme getting today. I call this reverse engineered keyword research. From there, you can start looking at it and saying, okay, there's this new trend I'm hearing a lot of people talking about. Let's see who's currently ranking for it. You see one of your competitors pops up. You can then look and see, hey, what keywords are they actually ranking for with this blog article they wrote? And you can make an assessment based on how much estimated value they're getting from that theme to say, should I be writing this as well? Or is this a really small opportunity? Why don't I circle back on this in 6 months? So those are two of the big strategies I like to use. To your point, you can also just go really deep down the rabbit hole of going into any of these keyword research tools. You may start out searching for like 1,000 different keyword variants. You may plug in a head term like razor blades and click to see all these follow-up questions that are coming out of it. Answer the Public is another tool I'll give a shout out for that is really good if you plug in a head term at saying, hey, here's a bunch of questions that we assume your readers are probably asking related to this core theme. You can take all those ideas, plug them into a keyword research tool, and see if there's any search volume behind them as well. So it's a really interesting mix of like analytics and also creativity coming together. In an ideal world, you're starting out from a creative standpoint, and then you're looking at the data to back up your decisions. But you can also just do a deep dive data plunge and see what you come up with and take it from there.
Okay, that's good. I mean, and am I taking the same approach if I'm trying to find keywords for the site as opposed to my blog? Am I paying attention to different search volume numbers and different keyword difficulty numbers? Or am I taking the same approach, both for, I feel like I personally want to split out my content work, each time I do a blog, I want to do keyword research around it as opposed to the site in and of itself. How do you approach those? How do you separate those, or do you not separate them?
Oh, great question. So what we'll do when we kick off a new relationship with a business that we're partnering with is we'll look to see, what are the current pages on your site? I would refer to this as like a keyword gap assessment, or a lot of different jargony terms you can use for it. But we'll look to see, what pages currently exist on the site, whether they be like product pages, product category pages, you name it. And we'll look to see what are the core themes that we need to incorporate on our entire website for us really to be the brand that dominates in that narrow positioning that we defined from the onset. We'll look to say, what are all those core themes? And then we'll look to map each of those core themes either to an existing page on the site, or we'll look at it and say, hey, we don't really have a page on the site today that matches this particular type of search query. Let's either A, create a new product page, B, create a new product category page, or C, create an educational blog article that is really focused on ranking for this core theme. So that is the tactic I find most effective, is start out by saying, what is that core theme I want to rank for? And then from there, ask yourself, what are the core sub-themes that fall under this umbrella term? And what is the best page either on my site today, or what's the best page I need to create in the next 12 months that is going to match that subtopic theme so that I can A, rank just directly for that theme that is going to drive good search volume, but B, so I can show Google that I am the authority on this and I have an understanding of all these subtopics related to this broad umbrella topic that I'm looking to rank for. So couple things that I'll share that can really help with that analysis. Because saying, hey, find every subtopic related to your main topic, it could be more actionable, I'll say. Couple of the things that I find really effective for this. One of my favorite SEO tools to work with today is a tool called ClearScope. Without getting too deep into the weeds, they use a statistical analysis method called term frequency, inverse document frequency. Term itself isn't super important, but it's a tool that is used in order to predict what sort of themes are going to be perceived as closely related to a core theme that you're looking to rank for, based on themes that are currently ranking for that particular search query today. So I like to use the example of like Super Mario World. If you're trying to rank first on Google by writing an educational blog article about Super Mario World, really term frequency, inverse document frequency analysis is almost definitely going to tell you that, hey, in order to rank for this theme, you need to show Google that you're also talking about, the character Mario. First of all, you need to mention Luigi. You need to make sure you're talking about the main villain, Bowser. Make sure you talk about Mushroom Kingdom, Princess Peach, and all these other core elements, Koopa Troopas. Everything like that is perceived as being really closely related to this umbrella theme of Super Mario World. So that same thing can be applied to your website. ClearScope, it's an expensive tool, but it is a phenomenal tool. And there are a lot of other more affordable alternatives that I've found aren't quite as effective as of today. We've done a lot of tests. But if you find any tool that does term frequency, inverse document frequency analysis, that can be a really powerful way to find some of those sub-themes. Another really great approach you can take is look at your competitor's site. Specifically, what you can actually do is if you take your competitor's domain and you type the following into Google, site : competitor domain with no spaces in between, what you're going to pull is quite a bit of data about indexed pages on your competitor's site. And you're specifically going to see the title tags that Google is rendering for those pages. So from there, you can start looking at it, and based on the core themes that are incorporated in the title tags for those subpages, you can make some really safe, some really safe assumptions about what are the core themes that they're targeting for each page on their site. You can start to target a lot of those sub-themes as well in your pages so that you're making sure you do have sub-pages related to each of those.
Wow. First of all, your knowledge of Super Mario Brothers, impressive too. That's amazing. You know a lot about that. But those tools, I feel, again, if I'm an e-commerce entrepreneur and I maybe can't afford to hire an agency yet to help me, or, a professional in this area, I might need to be looking at tools and understand how to use those tools. And, yes, these tools have a cost to them, but if they can get you there faster with more knowledge and more information, that is valuable, because as we could see, everybody who's listening today, this is complex. There's a lot that goes, SEO is a mature industry. It's been around, right? It's a mature strategy that's been around for quite a long time. And with it, there are layers now that you have to, really, take into consideration. And the last one I want to just touch on is link building. I like, maybe when I call it, the third pillar of search engine optimization. I find it sometimes to be the one that's the hardest to go after. Yes, you can write your own content and create blogs. Perfect, good. Learn the strategies, do it. You can do the on-site, right? You can do your keyword research. You can learn, but how do you do link building, and how important is link building in the overall scope of a search engine optimization strategy?
Oh, great question. So link building is, in my eyes, it is the toughest thing for businesses to handle in-house. We've worked with and we've spoken to a lot of businesses that have said like, hey, we're going to try and build out our own link building machine. And my guidance is generally like, good luck. It's really tough and it's really expensive to build an effective link building system. What I think is important to note within that, so Google has come out many times, and I would say probably directly said, but definitely indirectly said, that they don't like sites doing link building. For them, oftentimes they see link building as like a way of manipulating their search engine ranking system. There are a lot of exceptions, but a good way to look at it is that most link building is not kosher in Google's eyes. There are things that you can do that are 100% by the book, but I personally look at link building as similar to like speeding on a highway, where it's almost like if certainly not legal advice here, but if you're going a little bit over the speed limit, let's say the speed limit is 60 and you're going 70 miles per hour, a state trooper is probably not going to pull you over for it. If the speed limit is 60 and you're going 120 miles per hour, that's really obvious to a state trooper. Yeah, they're probably going to pull you over and you're probably going to be in some pretty serious trouble for that. If you are going to do link building, I'd really advocate for doing it conservatively. Use it as a tool to help your content to start ranking in Google so that other businesses can find you, other customers can find you, and that they will naturally start linking to your content because it is the best resource on the internet. Treat it as almost like a catalyst that's going to give you a chance to compete with your big competitors. But look at it as an approach that you really are just getting yourself into the arena to begin with, and then your content itself needs to prove itself from there. So from there, with link building, I feel very confident saying that one of the approaches to link building that is absolutely by the book is if you're doing any sort of like PR-centric approaches, assuming it is ethical PR, assuming you're not doing something illegal just to get your name in the news. But there are a lot of different platforms you can work with for that. Formerly Haro, or Help a Reporter Out, now Connectively, is a really great platform that I would encourage any listeners to sign up for as an expert in your space. Now Connectively, apologies if I say Haro, I'm still trying to switch over to the new name. But Connectively is a great platform that connects journalists to subject matter experts. So journalists will sign up for it. They may put out a query request and say, hey, we're looking for e-commerce business owners who can share guidance on fulfillment trends that they are seeing for 2024. If you are an e-commerce, business owner or an e-commerce marketer, let's say, and you can chime in on fulfillment trends, you can chime in on things that you're seeing, things that work well for you, things that don't work well for you. You can submit a quote to these journalists and have a very decent likelihood of actually being featured in these major publications. We've helped clients to get featured in Forbes, USA Today. We've gotten Zapier, HubSpot. We have a pretty big list. We've gotten featured in quite a few publications from that. And that is a really great approach that business owners can take on firsthand in order to get some really high quality links. In my experience, success rate may be like 5 to 20%, depending on how much time you put into the query and how much demand or how much interest let's say the journalist gets for the quote. But that is a phenomenal thing that I'd encourage all business owners to sign up for. Set aside an hour block or a couple hour-long blocks every week and just start responding to the queries that you are an expert in. It's going to take some time to get those links, but those will work wonders for your brand. Outside of that, a lot of other things that you can do directly if you want to get sites to link back to you. If your local area is really important to your business, if you're supporting, if you're in the local chamber of commerce, if you support any local charities, look for relationships with other businesses in your area that you can mutually support. So, for example, look for if you're a wedding dress company, look for maybe DJs that are in your area, or DJs that have been hired by some of the people that have gotten married that you've helped find the wedding dress for. Look for caterers, everything like that, and look to see if any of these individuals would include a link on their website back to your website. That sends a really strong signal to Google that you are a trustworthy brand, because you're ultimately getting this endorsement from all of these other websites now. So if you have a really strong local presence, look for partnerships like that where you can get sites to link back to you, call it on their resource page. If you're outside of that realm, one of the things that our team does, we do a lot of relationship building with other publishers out there. That can be really time intensive to set up. But certainly there are opportunities where you could look to build relationships with other bloggers in your space. You could look to collaborate on their blog articles. Google will tell you guest blogging is against their policies. What I like to say is if you do small scale guest blogging where you're writing a handful of articles for really high authority industry publications and you're writing well thought out arguments, I'd argue that's in everyone's best interest, in that I would say in the long term is something that Google is going to support. If you're just guest blogging on a bunch of low quality publications, probably not. That's not what Google wants to see. But link building is a really tricky nut to crack. That is an area where I do generally recommend working with agencies. Just because it's, if you work with an agency, we've been doing our link building process, I think, for the past 5 years. It takes a long time to build up those industry relationships so that we can get links on a regular basis. But short term, you can find a lot of other things you can do to at least start the process. Again, focusing on Connectively or any of these other platforms that allow you to share quotes with journalists. Look for, local publications that you can work with. Those are really two of the best things you can do from the DIY approach.
That's great. Wow. Amazing information. Now, just a quick little follow-up on that. Do I need to worry about, your example about being in the wedding industry, maybe reaching out to another local company? Do I need to worry if that site is spammy? Is there anything I can do to check that site before I request? Or am I just good to go and just reach out because they are in the same industry?
Oh, great question. So on the spammy side of things, I think a really good way to approach it without getting into any sophisticated tools, do the eyeball check. If you're considering reaching out to someone, check their site. If it looks like it hasn't been updated since the 1990s, maybe hold off on reaching out to them. If you go to the site and there's some really questionable content on there, maybe don't reach out to them. Maybe skip over that site. There are more sophisticated tools that can go into that. My personal belief is that, and Google has said this directly, whether you choose to believe them or not, but Google has more or less said hey, we're really good at uncovering sites that are spammy and we just ignore them. So if a really spammy site is linking back to you, unless it's someone who is negatively attacking your site, you can just ignore it. We'll pick up on it. We'll just disregard them from the index. If you do deal with a scenario where you think a competitor may be getting a bunch of sites to link back to you, you think that maybe someone paid someone on Fiverr to get 1,000 really low quality domains to link back to you, reach out to me, pat@intergrowth.com. Happy to take a look. There are cases where it can be really good to actively do things to not have those sites associated with you. I come from the camp, though, where Google is pretty sophisticated. It's pretty good at just saying, hey, this is just a spammy site. We're just going to ignore it. It's not going to be a positive. It's not going to be a negative for your brand.
Wow. All right. That's great. Very phenomenal. And listen, Pat, as I was scrolling through your LinkedIn profile yesterday, getting ready, prepping for our interview, I came across your post about Google's search generative experience and how it's going to revolutionize product software comparison queries. And that's how, I'm quoting you on what you put out there. And I saw that you had a long form blog on your site, which you quickly answered as you talked about how you do your content. What is this? I feel like this is going to benefit e-commerce businesses in the long run. What's happening here that we should know about?
Yeah, so search generative experience. It kills me that I can never say that correctly.
It's a tough word. The branding on that's they got to change, or SGE, right? SGE.
Oh, exactly. I was doing a recording with someone on my team. I think it was last week, and we had to redo the recording 5 times because I kept on butchering the word. So now that I've said it one time, now it's SGE. SGE is fascinating. So really quick background to it. Google announced it at Google I/O, May of 2023. They have been doing beta testing with it for coming up on the past year. We'll say the past year. There is some speculation that they're going to officially release it to the public at this year's Google I/O in May of 2024. Regardless of the exact timeline, Google has very clearly said, hey, we plan on releasing this at some point in 2024. SGE is ultimately Google using AI to come up with these AI summaries for a lot of queries. In many cases, they'll link out to other pages. And maybe we can even share my article in the show notes for anyone who wants to read more about it. But the abridged version to it is, this is going to, assuming it does get rolled out in a large capacity, this is going to have a monumental impact for businesses. The nice thing that comes into play for e-commerce business owners is SGE is going to drastically change the way that people are going to find your business through search engines like Google. That being said, SGE isn't going to change the number of people who want to buy a razor blade. If there's, I'm making up numbers, if there's 1 million people who want to buy razor blades every year in the US, there's not suddenly going to only be 500,000 people that want to buy it just because SGE rolled out. You're still going to have those 1 million potential customers. You're just going to have a different funnel to get them to your website. So one of the biggest ways that we expect SGE to, I would say, indirectly impact a lot of e-commerce business owners, I'm very confident in saying we're going to see a big rise in a lot of queries that have historically gone to publisher sites. Think of like Wirecutter, think of NerdWallet, think of, Amazon's product pages or product category pages. We're going to see a lot of queries that these types of businesses have historically ranked really well for. Think, best razor blades of 2024, best pillow of 2024, brand A versus brand B, who has a better razor blade. A lot of these queries that give a very high intent that someone is looking to make a purchase, but they're in many cases maybe looking for like that snap bit of information before making a purchase. SGE is going to allow searchers to skip over going to any of these publisher sites, get the answer directly in search results to see, okay, Harry's razor blade is the best for this particular purpose, as like the 2-sentence abridged summary. Dollar Shave Club is the best razor blade according to reviews for this particular purchase. It's then going to free up a lot of potential customers to then say, hey, I'm going to skip over clicking on any of these publisher sites. I'm just going to type in Harry's razor blades directly on Google as my follow-up search, and I'm going to click directly onto the Harry's razor blades website. So my expectation is we're going to see a lot of businesses that are going to see way less traffic coming to their site from search engines like Google. That being said, we shouldn't see any change in revenue. What I expect is going to be the biggest impact for like e-commerce specifically is you're going to start seeing less people getting to your site doing product research. But every individual who gets to your site is going to have a way higher purchase intent, B, is going to be way more interested in learning the intricate details about your product. So you may lose 20% of readers coming to your site, but you may get 20% more revenue from each of the 80% of readers that do actually remain coming to your site. The thing I think that's going to be toughest to predict about SGE that I'm really excited about is if we have this scenario where, let's stick with the best razor blades example that I've been beating to death throughout this whole podcast. If we have this, best razor blades example, we have making up a number. We have 10,000 people going to Google every month searching for best razor blades. Right now, chances are most of those people are clicking on one of these publisher sites that then gets a little bit of referral commission for referring people to, the top 5 brands that they recommend. If the razor blade sells for $10, maybe they get $1 out of it, or maybe they get 50 cents for each sale. The market for these publisher sites writing about this content, I feel very confident saying, is going to shrink pretty drastically, given that a lot of people are not going to need to click onto these sites to read these robust reviews. They're going to get the quick answer from SGE saying, hey, here's some things to consider. Here's some of the brands we recommend based on the data we kind of just skimmed from these other publisher sites. And you're going to kind of cut out the middleman in that scenario. Over time, we're going to start seeing, I believe, a pretty big drop off in the number of these publisher sites that are writing these queries. So I would just say I'm really fascinated to see what happens here, but I think we're going to see this really weird trend where it's almost like we're going to get to like 2026 and no one is going to be writing about the best razor blades of 2026. And then I'll be curious to see like, what does SGE actually pull from in terms of their data set? Is it, pulling Amazon reviews? Is it reading off of other product pages? So I think we're going to see a lot of volatility in the market. E-commerce businesses are in a really good place though, given that I feel pretty confident saying you're just going to likely have to pay out a little bit less commission to those publisher sites that maybe you're giving affiliate commission to today, but keep on focusing on SEO. The other thing that's going to come into play with SGE oftentimes will recommend a couple brands in particular. I feel very confident saying that SGE is going to largely build those recommendations based on the same things that Google looks at when building out their ranking algorithms. What brands are most reputable? What brands are most relevant to this particular query? And what brands are most straightforward for us to understand the web contents of? So I actually am saying double down on SEO right now. We're still in a space where you can get a ton of ROI from it right now. And I feel very confident saying that if Google is only picking 2 or maybe 3 products or 2 or 3 brands that they're going to recommend as the featured brands in their SGE result, you really want to push to be that number 1 brand for that positioning that you're going after. So invest the resources today, solidify that position for yourself, and you may have a really powerful moat that you're able to hold on to for the next couple of years with significantly less investment than it might cost, call it 5 years in the past.
I feel like this is huge. This is a game changer. And yeah, those sites are, they're funny. I mean, we see them all the time, right? The top 10 this and the top 10 that, and they're all, generally all affiliate links. And you start to not trust those, by the way, too. At some point, you're like, well, this person's getting paid. They're making a cut. Do they really believe that this is one of the best ones? So maybe that's, in Google's thinking as well, is that, those top 10 lists and things like that are not really delivering the true value out there. The person selling the product, they're delivering the true value, which has always been the case. And you're what you mentioned about the middleman, right? You're cutting out the middleman in all of this, or the middle person in all of this. So I think this is a game changer. Absolutely huge news that will slowly start to roll out. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen with it. We'll put a link to to the article. I found the article fascinating. I just think all of it is, it's almost like they're giving love back to the e-commerce world. They're like, hey, listen, we've paid attention to publishers for a long time. We haven't forgotten about you. We're back. We're going to give you some love now. We're going to help you sell, ultimately get to you faster, right? You don't have to go 2 clicks in to get to your site.
I hope so. And I agree with you. I think this is going to be a monumental shift in the way that search works. Assuming that Google rolls it out in a large capacity and doesn't scrap it 12 months in, but we've let the genie out of the bottle. AI is here. I would argue it's not great at doing a lot of things, but there are certain things that AI is way better than human beings at doing. I see this as the type of change that Google probably didn't want to roll out. They'd probably prefer if we could keep AI back in the bottle, not have released that. I think they're pretty happy with the way their business model works, but I don't see this going away. And I think if you're in e-commerce, start looking into it now. Start testing out SGE. You can enable it by going, log into your Google account, go over to Search Labs, and you can actually set up SGE. It's not going to pop up every single time for you, but it is, especially if you're US based. I'm unfortunately in Stockholm, Sweden right now, and I don't get SGE results while I'm over here. So whenever I'm back in the US, I search like crazy so I can get more exposure to it. But assuming you're US based or you're in one of the countries where SGE is currently available, do everything you can to enable it so you can start getting more data points about how is Google rendering these SGE results. What types of pages are popping up? What types of queries are they popping up for? And I would argue that if you are in e-commerce and if you start thinking about this today, you are going to be leaps and bounds ahead of most of your competitors. So get ahead while you can. Start learning about it today. I think this is going to be huge.
Wow. That's phenomenal. I appreciate, and thank you for providing the tip on how to actually get access to it, in its early days. All right. So we've got one last question for you. This is our wrap-up question. Okay. A little fun here. And I think the last time you were on the podcast, AI really wasn't even a thing yet. It was, generative AI was just, starting to happen. We weren't really talking about it as much as we are today. And now it's a massive force, right, in our daily lives. Okay. And we talked a lot about it in the podcast today and tips and tricks on how to utilize it properly in your, search engine optimization strategies. So with that said, I know you go on, as I do, you check it out all the time. What what is something that you have done on AI that has blown you away? And you walked away in that moment of like, wow, I cannot believe that does this.
Ooh. Well, actually, this is a funny one that I can reference. So, that LinkedIn post that you gave me a shout out for, 90% AI generated.
Love it. I love it. Thank you for it. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea. It was well written. It got my attention. I read it. Topic was interesting.
So
too.
yeah,
Wow.
quick back context behind it. So I was talking with like a friend in the industry, I think a couple of days ago, and she had brought up the point of like, hey, test out AI for LinkedIn posts. Like, it's really good about taking concepts and figuring out how to like put it in a manner that is going to resonate with a LinkedIn audience. So I was like, Melissa, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of it, but sure, I'll give it a shot. So I sat down for, I think it was an hour or two, yesterday, actually, I guess it was, put together a couple ideas. And I told her, I was like, I'm going to sneak these in here. Please call me out if you could tell they're AI generated. So I will say, first draft was good. It was very cheesy. It wasn't my brand voice. So I took the overarching concept, I took the flow of the post, and I said, let me rewrite some of the words. Let me add the human touch, add the human edits to it. But yeah, I joked with her and I was like, all right, I have like 4 of these. I'm going to test them out in the wild and see how they do. But yeah, so that we'll call it maybe 80% AI generated there.
Nice. I love it. I mean, I get, I have wow moments every day. The example of the alt text, that was a wow moment for me. Just, you would assume it can do these things, but how it does it, and then, and what it gives back to you, like a moment of like, oh my gosh, how could I not live without you? This is absolutely amazing. But use it for good. Be involved in the process, and for sure. And I think what Pat is saying, that he was very involved in the process of that. But it was a very good
And building upon that, just for some additional context to your point, like, AI is phenomenal if it has a good training ground to start out with. So in this particular LinkedIn post, I took a full length blog article I had written. I took a couple paragraphs from it and I said, hey, this is 500 words of copy right here. Write me a LinkedIn post that's, a fraction of this. And from there, I was able to say, okay, we can take the core insights that are in here. We can just compress it down into, more LinkedIn friendly words. If you were to go to ChatGPT today and say, hey, put together a response for how e-commerce is going to be impacted by SGE. Yeah, you're probably not going to get that same quality of data. But if you can take an insight that you've already shared, it's phenomenal at saying, hey, I can rewrite this into another way. I can put it in a tone that's gonna work for this particular audience.
Brilliant. Love it. Well, Pat, thank you. I feel like this was a masterclass on search engine optimization. It wasn't just a podcast. This has been absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm a student just as much as I am, an advisor in this world. I learned from you a lot, and I know that our audience is going to, take this information and hopefully run with it and help build and then reach out to you. And I want to just thank you, personally, for coming on our Season 2, Episode 1 of the E-commerce Revolution podcast. Your insights are fantastic. Maybe just take a moment. You have a couple of businesses that you run on a daily basis. Tell the audience, about those, and how they can get in touch with you, and where they can find you on social media. And it will be you answering. I know, not AI.
Yeah, as long as it's within the next couple months, we'll say it'll be me. We'll see if we can build a chat bot that answers on my behalf beyond that. No, Ramin, thank you for having me on. It's so fun getting to talk to you. Great series of questions. I had a blast. For listeners, though, and apologies for me sitting forward, the sun is coming right into my eyes here, so I'm trying to find the right angle before we wrap up. But yeah, a couple ways to get in touch with me. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name's Pat Ahern. Let's see. Feel free to email me directly, pat@introgrowth.com. Happy to answer any questions, concerns. Hop on an SEO strategy call with you, either help point you in the right direction with DIY resources or talk to you about working with our business. For me, really one business that has kind of what I'd call 2 subcomponents. Intergrowth is the main business I started. We do SEO-centric content marketing. Really fancy way of saying we write long-form blog articles for your site. we get high quality sites to link back to you, and we do SEO consulting to help you every step of the way as you grow. One of the things we've learned over time, we've also worked with a lot of e-commerce businesses over the years. And we've seen a lot of those businesses really want to get started with SEO. They really want some guidance, but they're not ready to invest a couple $1,000s a month into SEO. So we've launched a new brand called ScaleCart, which is entirely focused on setting up like hourly SEO services. So you can sign up for a half a day of SEO expertise. You can sign up for a full day as a one-off. You can sign up for a day a month or a couple days a month. The idea is just making SEO a little bit more easily attainable for businesses. And really with that, you get to talk to one of the strategists on our team who are going to help point you in the right direction with strategy, give you guidance on some of the things that you can do in-house to keep costs lower, and tell you what are the areas that really our team should be handling for you so that within that limited scope of hours, you can make some really serious progress as you start scaling your business.
Beautiful. Love it. I love ScaleCart. I think it's a great idea. I think, as you said, it makes SEO attainable, right? Especially for emerging e-commerce businesses out there. And then at some point, their businesses get so big that they need, that regular ongoing help, which is so, so important. So thank you again, Pat, for coming on the podcast today. And that's all I've got. Thanks very much, everybody. See ya. All right, that brings us to the end of another episode of the E-commerce Revolution podcast. Don't forget to check out past episodes, which are all available on demand on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Ready to join the revolution? Become an exclusive part of our growing community of emerging e-commerce entrepreneurs at ecomrevolution.co. Until next time, see ya.